Alex Higgins. The name alone conjures images of chaos, brilliance, and raw talent. To those who witnessed him in his prime, he was more than just a snooker player. He was a force of nature, a whirlwind who could transform the quiet, methodical world of snooker into something unpredictable, electric, and sometimes dangerous. Known as Hurricane Higgins, his life was as turbulent as his game, filled with triumph, controversy, and a personality larger than the sport itself. Born on the 18th of March 1949 in Belfast, Northern Ireland, Alex Higgins grew up in a working-class family during a time of social unrest. Northern Ireland in the 1950s and 60s was a region steeped in tension, and young Higgins quickly developed a toughness that would serve him well, both on and off the snooker table. He was the eldest of 4 children, and from a young age he found himself drawn to the local snooker halls. It wasn't just a pastime, it was a sanctuary. A place where he could channel his energy and frustration into something that made sense, something he could control. Higgins' early life was marked by hardship. His father, who worked long hours, struggled to provide for the family, and Higgins often clashed with authority figures at school. Yet it was precisely this rebellious streak that would struggle to provide for the family, and Higgins often clashed with authority figures at school. Yet it was precisely this rebellious streak that would define him on the snooker table. He wasn't a player who conformed to the rules of tradition. Instead, he created his own. Local clubs and community halls in Belfast became his training grounds, and by his teenage years, he was already showing flashes of brilliance that would soon captivate the world. Higgins' style was unlike anything the snooker world had seen before. At a time when the game was dominated by a slow, calculated, almost clinical approach, Higgins brought speed, flair, and emotion. He attacked the balls with unrelenting pace, often making risky shots that defied conventional wisdom. To watch him play was to watch someone rewriting the rules in real time. Every frame he contested carried the thrill of uncertainty. He could be spectacularly brilliant one minute, then unpredictably reckless the next. Yet somehow, time and time again, the brilliance would shine through. His professional career began in the late 1960s, and it didn't take long for Higgins to make a mark. By 1972, he was competing in the World Snooker Championship, and even though he didn't win, audiences quickly recognized that a new star had emerged. He played with a ferocity and speed that contrasted sharply with the deliberate, cautious style of his contemporaries. While other players plotted every shot with meticulous care, Higgins played instinctively, trusting his natural feel for the game. His boldness made him unpredictable, exciting, and sometimes infuriating to opponents and fans alike. The defining moment of Higgins' career, and the one that cemented his legend, came in 1972, with his first World Championship victory. At just 22 years old, Higgins had captivated audiences not just with his skill, but with his charisma. He wasn't merely winning, he was entertaining, transforming snooker from a game for the elite into a spectacle accessible to everyone. Crowds adored him, not simply for the victories he claimed, but for the sheer thrill of watching him play. Television audiences who had previously dismissed snooker as slow or dull now tuned in eagerly to see him in action. The sport's popularity soared, and Higgins' influence extended far beyond the base. Higgins' style was revolutionary. Unlike his contemporaries who meticulously planned each shot, Higgins trusted instinct and imagination. He could pot a ball from impossible angles, and his break building was audacious. He was a pioneer of attacking snooker, demonstrating that the sport could be as exciting as any other televised entertainment. He brought in elements of theatre to the table, dramatic flukes, wild celebrations, and a fiery temper that could erupt at a moment's notice. His rivalries were legendary, particularly with players like Cliff Thorburn, Steve Davis, and Jimmy White. Each match becoming a battle not only of skill, but of personalities and psychology. One of Higgins' most famous matches came in the 1972 World Championship final against John Spencer. Higgins played with a combination of aggression and precision that stunned everyone. His potting was audacious, his safety play sometimes reckless, but when the balls fell his way, the results were mesmerizing. He claimed the championship with a display of sheer brilliance and nerve. And from that moment, Alex Higgins was a household name. The victory wasn't just personal, it was symbolic, signaling the arrival of a new era in snooker. One where flair and unpredictability could be just as important as technique and discipline. Despite his talent, Higgins' career was punctuated by controversy. He was banned from the game several times for disciplinary reasons, often stemming from clashes with officials or breaches of conduct. In 1986, he faced a high-profile ban after repeated incidents, yet each time he returned, drawn inexorably back to the table. His resilience became a defining trait. No matter how far he fell, he always found a way back. These comebacks only added to his legend, painting him as a flawed genius who couldn't be tamed. It was a duality that fascinated fans, the player who could dominate a table one week and be embroiled in scandal the next. Off the table, Higgins' life mirrored the chaos of his playing style. He struggled with alcohol, He struggled with alcohol, personal relationships, and financial instability, and his temper was infamous. There are countless stories of confrontations with referees, opponents, and even spectators. Yet it was precisely this unpredictability that made him magnetic. Fans didn't just watch Higgins play snooker, they watched Higgins live, and it was impossible to look away. He embodied both brilliance and rebellion, a combination that made him the sport's first true superstar in the modern era. Higgins' influence extended far beyond the snooker hall. He became a cultural figure in Northern Ireland, a symbol of passion, defiance, and hope. Young people growing up amid the Troubles saw in him a representation of possibility, someone from a working-class background who could rise to global prominence unapologetically himself. He inspired a generation of Northern Irish athletes, showing that talent, determination, and charisma could overcome circumstance, even in a society riven by conflict. Throughout the 1970s and early 1980s, Higgins continued to capture the imagination of fans worldwide. He was a two-time world champion, winning again in 1982 in a dramatic final against Ray Reardon. The victory 10 years after his first was a testament to his enduring skill and nerve. The match was a clash of contrasting styles, Reardon's precise, methodical approach versus Higgins' instinctive, high-risk brilliance. The victory proved that even as age and lifestyle took their toll, Higgins could still rise to the occasion, captivating audiences with his characteristic flair. Higgins' rivalries were legendary, not just for their competitiveness, but for the drama surrounding them. Matches against Steve Davis in the 1980s were particularly memorable. Davis, the epitome of calm, calculating professionalism, was the perfect foil for Higgins' emotional, high-octane style. When they faced each other, it wasn't just a snooker match. It was a clash of philosophies, a battle of temperament, and an exhibition of two contrasting worlds of the sport colliding. Higgins' unpredictability often unsettled his opponents, forcing them into mistakes and creating moments of pure spectacle. Perhaps no story illustrates Higgins' complexity better than his infamous temper. On multiple occasions, he confronted referees over perceived injustices, sometimes storming out of venues or threatening to quit the sport altogether. Yet, paradoxically, it was this versatility that endeared him to fans. Higgins played with heart, and his emotions were raw, visible, and unfiltered. He made snooker human, relatable, and thrilling. Every frame carried tension, not just from the balls on the table, but from the possibility of a dramatic outburst or unexpected brilliance. Higgins' personal life, though often troubled, reflected the intensity with which he approached everything. He struggled with alcoholism and financial instability, and his relationships were often strained. Yet he also showed moments of generosity and vulnerability. He devoted time to charity and mentorship, particularly in Northern Ireland, helping young players navigate a sport that could be as unforgiving off the table as it was on it. Higgins' life was a tapestry of extremes, triumph and despair, genius and folly, adoration and controversy. In the later years of his career, Higgins' appearances became less frequent, but his aura never dimmed. He was often seen at tournaments still capable of moments of magic, reminding the snooker world of what had made him unforgettable. Documentaries, interviews, and retrospectives cemented his status as a tragic hero of the sport, a man whose genius was inseparable from his flaws. His story is not only about snooker, it's about human complexity, the capacity for brilliance and self-destruction, and the way talent can shine even amidst chaos. Alex Higgins' legacy is enduring. He changed snooker forever, showing that the sport could be exciting, unpredictable, and emotionally charged. Players who followed him were inspired to play with flair, confidence, and personality. Television audiences, who might have once dismissed snooker as slow or boring, found themselves captivated by the drama he brought to every match. His influence shaped the way snooker is played, watched, and understood, making him one of the most important figures in the sport's history. Higgins was, in many ways, a study in contrast. He was disciplined yet impulsive, brilliant yet erratic, beloved yet controversial. He brought speed and flair to a traditionally conservative game, transforming snooker into a spectacle and inspiring countless others to play with courage and creativity. Modern snooker, with its emphasis on attacking play, television appeal, and player personalities, owes a debt to Higgins. Without him, the sport might have remained a niche pursuit. With him, it became an entertainment phenomenon. To watch Alex Higgins play was to witness unpredictability at its finest. Every shot carried risk, every frame carried suspense, every match carried drama. He was a player who refused to be constrained by convention, who challenged the status quo, who reminded the world that sport at its best is as much about personality, emotion, and spectacle as it is about skill and strategy. His legacy lives on, not only in the history books, but in every daring break, every audacious pot, and every player who dares bring creativity to the table. Alex Higgins passed away on the 24th of July, 2010, leaving behind a complicated but unforgettable legacy. His career was filled with highs and lows, brilliance and controversy, but through it all, he remained a symbol of what makes sport compelling. Unpredictability, passion, and the courage to defy convention. He was, in every sense, the hurricane of snooker, a force of nature whose impact will be felt for generations to come. In the end, Alex Higgins was not just a snooker champion, he was a hurricane, sweeping through the sport with force, leaving chaos, brilliance, and inspiration in his wake. He was a man of contrasts, whose genius could not be contained, whose flair could not be taught, and whose legacy could not be ignored. For those who witnessed him, Higgins was unforgettable. For those who didn't, his legend continues to remind us that greatness is often messy, unpredictable, and above all, thrilling.